What is up, everybody? Thank you so much for tuning into another episode of the Anti-Gravity Group podcast. My name is Braden Carlson.
My name is Taylor.
My name is Shane, or as you might know me, Postart.
And my name is Matt, or you may know me as Macho Matt.
And today we are joined by yet another guest, and perhaps the only person we know that's like somewhat in our age group that out rocketry OGs Taylor. And that's our friend Joe Hill. How you doing today, Joe?
Doing well. Thanks for having me, guys.
So tell us a little bit about who you are and rocketry and what you do. We go a little bit in deeper after this, but give us the general overview.
Okay. Well, my name is Joe Hill. I'm the Propellant Manufacturing Manager for Industrial Solid Propulsion, Aerotech Consumer Aerospace, and the Quest divisions that were recently acquired by Karman Space and Defense.
Sort of touch on that a little bit later, but first we got to dig into your rocketry history, because there's a lot of people that work at companies like Aerotech or, you know, various other manufacturers that don't really have much of a background in hobby rocketry, but that is really, really not applicable to you. You've been around for quite some time. So tell us where it all started and about your journey through your cert flights and outstanding projects and all that. Just go off.
All right. So I got into rocketry really, really young because my dad was into the hobby, which, you know, a lot of people in the hobby kind of come from their parents bringing them into it. Some of my earliest memories in life were building, you know, little Estes kits or rockets out of spare parts in my dad's office. The whole reason that came about was like the typical rocketeer. He flew the Estes stuff in college and actually in the earlier days, probably in the late 50s, early 60s, I think is when he got started. Kind of got away from it. And then when he started a family in the 80s, he kind of dipped his head back into the hobby to see where it had gone. And I think, if I remember correctly, he saw a picture of an initiator, you know, in a local hobby magazine. So he went to the hobby shop, and I think F motors were just at this time available. So he bought an initiator kit, took it out to a park, flew it on an F motor, and you know, was completely blown away because even in the late 80s, early 90s, Fs were a pretty big deal. So, you know, my brother and my sister, who are older than me, he tried to get them into it, and they didn't really take to it like I did. So he started, he's one of the few that started the Tripoli East North Carolina group, which is prefecture number 65. So they've been around for a long time. I think Scarpine was actually like one of the OGs that started Tripoli East as well, and a few others, and I can't really remember the names of those guys. But you know, I grew up running around the launches and flying my Big Bertha like 9 or 10 times on C65s. I think my dad would just go to Ken Allen at Performance Hobbies and say, you know, give him as many motors as he wants, just keep him out of my hair while I'm busy running the launch.
Man, lucky
Dude,
you.
the Big
So-
Bertha is so universally applicable. I had a baby Bertha. I didn't originally have a Big Bertha when I was younger, but Taylor, did you have a Big Bertha?
No, I didn't. I had a baby Bertha later at the end of my low power flying days, but yeah, a lot of that was just like what we could get at the hobby store, you know.
Right. Yeah, I think my baby Bertha came from Walmart. It was my first rocket ever, I believe. But yeah, sorry to cut you off there, Joe.
No, it's all good, man. I think my very first actual kit was a gnome, an Estes gnome that I would fly on like A3s when I was like 3 years old or something like that. And my first ever rocket that I can remember was a paper towel tube that I took, what's the half A OD, 13 millimeters, I think, quarter A or whatever.
Yeah.
And there were a bunch of spare parts in my dad's office because he was into high power at this time. And I found two 13 millimeter, whatever, the BT, I'm not really familiar with the nomenclature of Estes tubes, but I found
B5,
two 13 millimeter
right?
tubes, something like
so.
that. I found two of those 13 millimeter tubes and glued them into this paper towel tube using toilet paper as like mock centering rings.
Yeah.
And my dad came home on his lunch break and he looked at it and he was like, Joe, this isn't going to work. And you can imagine how like devastated I was as a 3-year-old because I was like, I built my first rocket. I'm so excited. So he was like, it's just going to completely fall apart. So I remember taking Elmer's glue and like coating the whole outside of the paper towel tube, thinking it was going to reinforce it enough to fly. And I later took that to a launch and flew it on 2 half A's, and it worked. And my dad said he knew then that I was going to, stick to this whole hobby thing for a while.
That's awesome.
I went through the years flying bigger and bigger rockets, got into some mid-power stuff. I had a Lock Onyx that I flew like 35 times or something from the time I was like 5 to 6. And then got a little bit older. Once I turned 18, I got into trying to get my level 1. And I had this rocket that I scratch built out of, spare parts in the garage and the office and stuff like that. And I got my level 1 in 2000, I think it was 2008 or 2009. I flew that on an H-165, just motor ejection, nothing crazy. And then I went off to college, and that kept me a little bit busy. I would go to launches when I could. And when I was a junior, I think, no, I can't remember. All this stuff kind of is blurry now at this age, but I built a 4-inch Mad Cow Frenzy. This would have been like 2012, maybe 2013. I got my level 2 with that on a J315 Redline. And that was also, I think, my first dual deployment flight was my level 2 cert flight. Because at the time I was just so busy with school, and I was playing in a band and we were touring a lot. And I kind of stepped away more than, how often I go to launches now. So that worked. And then for 3 or 4 years, I flew JKs and Ls and everything from, L for a while. And then I was like, okay, I think it's time to get my level 3. So I got a 7.5-inch Smoke and Rockets Mega Nuke from Ken Allen at Performance Hobbies. Phenolic rocket, big 1/2-inch thick birch fins and a gel-coated fiberglass nose cone. Took it home. And when I was bringing it into my house, for some reason, I thought it'd be a good idea to just lay the tube with the fin slots forward against the wall while I'm carrying everything else in. The AC kicked on, blew it right over, hit a trunk, and broke the whole bottom section along the fin slots. And I was like, great, this is a wonderful start to my level 3. Yeah, so I ended up buying another section of 7.5-inch PML tubing from Ken, which was longer than what came with the kit. So if you've seen me fly my big black and yellow Mega Nuke, it's actually like way extended. It's like 13 feet tall instead of the like 10 feet tall that it was originally meant to be. But I flew that on an Aerotech M1780 for my level 3. It weighed like 55 pounds. It only went a mile. But at the time, I was like, I'm going to build this thing dumb heavy and build it like a tank. And it's completely way overbuilt, but it worked, and it's probably had 15 or 16 flights since then. And then here we are, just got bigger and bigger and bigger. The next thing to do in my mind was to build just a giant rocket. So I got some, as far as the largest rocket I've ever built, I got some 9.25-inch OD paper tubes from Ken. I think that's the same tubes that the Arcus, your double Arcus is made out of.
Yes, sir.
Blasted. Yeah. And I used my dad's nose cone for that. And it's actually the same nose cone he used for his level 3 in 1998. So I was like, I want to build a rocket around this nose cone. But that thing ended up weighing like 165 pounds and flew on a research Jim Livingston. Once we got the flight data back, it came out to about an 044, something like that. But it went 10,000 feet and came back just fine. And I'm never going to fly it again because it's way too big and heavy for me to fly by myself.
The big rockets are super fun. Like, it's like people really don't understand the logistical issues of them.
Oh my gosh. Transporting is one of the biggest things.
Yeah, it's really good that Taylor's boss lets us borrow the Professional Masterpiece all the time, or we would never fly the big rockets. But now that feels like a great segue real quick to ask people to subscribe to the Anti-Gravity Group channel. If you're watching this on YouTube, cool, press the subscribe button. If not, please go over to the YouTube channel and press the subscribe button, even if you're not going to watch stuff over there. Because once we get to 1,000 subscribers, then we can maybe make some money off of this and fly more big dumb rockets. Ultimately, that's the whole goal. So there's there's my little spiel there. I want to ask Joe, did you get yours before the presumably legal related name change? Your what would now be called a Smoking Rockets Mega Nuck.
I'm not sure when did that happen?
I don't know. Taylor and I saw it one time. He's got the big nuck and the mega nuck.
Mega nuck.
Yeah, just NUK.
Yeah, I think it was just one of those. We were on the website, and it's like, has that always been like that? No, I don't think so.
For all we know,
I'm pretty sure
it could just be a typo.
Could be. I know it's still on Ken's website it reads as the Mega Nuck. I don't know where or when people are like, yeah, it's probably a nuke. Let's just spell it NUK instead of NUKE.
It'd be kind of funny to put an umlaut over it, so it's like the German one. Yeah. Shout out to Ken Allen, performancehobbies.com. Dude, he still just got a bunch of snap ring hardware listed available, and I'm like, man, I just want all of it. And there's like a couple Kazan 2.5-inch loads in there. I'm like, I'm kind of tempted.
He was able to get me what he's saying was the very last Curtis 6-inch nose cone right before Curtis sold to Tim. And I bought that just like a year or two. No, it's about a year ago. But it's great nose cone.
Yeah, I guess a couple people managed to get the 6-inch Red Maxes right before that deal went through too. And I was like, dang, I need to fix mine because that is such a sweet rocket. But yeah, okay. Well, before we move on, does anybody else from the Anti-Gravity Group panel have any questions or comments for Joe?
Do you remember what your first mid-power rocket was? Or I guess was it the Onyx?
I think it was the Onyx. I think that was my first mid-power rocket. I had a Cheetah, and I had, let's see here. Starburst. I had a Lock Starburst that I flew on F-32s, a pair of F-32s all the time.
Underrated Lock rocket, I will say.
Yeah. It kind of looks like a extended Nuck. It's got the it's kind of the same fin profile.
Did you, Joe, you abided by the rules. You didn't fly high power at all till you were 18?
I can neither confirm nor deny.
No, your dad didn't fly high power with a rocket that you assisted with. There's an individual we know of that's in a similar boat to that a couple people have talked to me about, and I'm like, look, we did the same thing, man. It was really funny because we'll say at a certain launch that I went to in New York, I've only been to one, but at a certain launch I went to in New York, somebody was bringing this up. And I thought it was ironic that somebody was like, this is like, these kids doing this kind of thing could hurt somebody if they're playing with motors this powerful. And it was the day after we watched Woody Hoberg stand up there and give a presentation about how he was flying rockets back in the day, which I'm not going to mention specifics of that speech, but yeah. So I was like, yeah, it's really funny to be like, Woody is awesome, but everybody loves Woody. And then this next generation of the same concept, people are like, this is just dangerous. And I'm like, yeah, I heard it all, man. I heard it as a teenager. Taylor heard it as a teenager. You heard it, I'm sure. But your dad is super OG in rocketry, right? You said he did his level 3 in 98, but that was only because the certification process became a thing, right?
That's right. He actually was one of the Tripoli members that was confirmed instead of certified. And then I think the certification process came along in 95 or 96. Does that sound about right? Something like that?
Yeah. Yeah, and for those who aren't aware... Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, he went through the ranks pretty quickly after that and got his level 1, 2, and 3.
The confirmation process was before the tiered levels of certification. So it was basically somebody who was confirmed already would witness your flight like a level 1 cert. And you were confirmed, and you could fly an H3 and then go mix a P-motor if you wanted.
I think Tom Benford did that a couple times.
Dude, we've talked about Tom on this podcast a little bit. That man is way more OG than people think. He has pictures of him flying a P-motor at BlackRock in like 94 or something like that.
Yeah, Earl Cagle refers to him as the godfather of high power. Well, in his .39 productions videos, and that was back in the 90s. He was even being called
Right.
that.
Yeah. Yeah, Tom's truly a legend, man. When I was a teenager, I asked him for how to calculate doing a D grain motor because the N800s that he makes, and he sent me the equation and all the stuff that he does, and I was like, wow, I am way too stupid for this. But
he was putting that in a 15360 case, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like fully cast, like full diameter, and then cutting the D grain by hand, and they worked. It was nuts.
Yeah. Burned for something like, I don't know, like 14 or 15 seconds, probably more than that actually. With a
Dude, I think it was 20 or 22.
Wow.
Yeah.
He put one in a 7.5-inch goblin. Nuts.
That's just wild, man.
Should we have Joe maybe talk about his background some as far as like what you do, or not what you do, but what you went to school for, that kind of thing? You gave us what you do.
Yeah.
But if you want, you don't.
No, that's fine. I have a bachelor's degree from East Carolina University in environmental geology that I never really used because I just couldn't find a job that was really paying anything. Like, I'd be scraping by, and I spent most of my life up until about 2 years ago, when I moved to Utah from North Carolina, in hospitality. And long story short, I started out working at a pizza place in high school just to get some extra cash. When I went to college, I stayed in the restaurant industry just because my hours were so flexible for my school schedule. I could give up shifts if I, of course, procrastinated to study for a test the next day or something. Like, no college kid ever does that. And by the time I got out of school, at least for undergrad, I was making way more money than I would have been making if I took a job relative to my college degree by like a lot. And I was like, there's no way I'm going to take this much of a step back to finally do something professional, so to speak.
Right.
And it would take me 10, 12, 15 years in that industry with a job relative to my college degree or to my undergrad degree to make what I was making when I graduated from college in hospitality. I think I said that right. Yeah. So I just stuck with it. And I was like, well, I guess I'm just a lifer and I'm never going to get out of the restaurant industry. So that, I moved from bussing tables when I was in college to serving tables to bartending into finally the last thing I did was general management. And that kind of played its way into taking the job that I took with RCS. And the whole way that came about is actually kind of a interesting story. Basically, I went out to Spaceport America Cup in 2023, the big IREC event, as Duke University's flyer of record and mentor. And if you've ever been to a college event, and I'm not trying to knock on college students at all, there's a lot of downtime. Kids are putting their rocket up on the rail, they're bringing it back down because they put their screw switch right along where their rail guides are. So when they put it on the rail, they can even get to it, or, you name it. So I would, in the downtime, kind of go just hang out at the Aerotech tent. And Gary Rosenfield and Carl Bauman were there. And I had met them a few times at big launches, regional launches, in LDRS and things like that. And we just kind of hung around and talked. So when I got back from New Mexico, it was in Las Cruces that year, I saw a post on some sort of social media. I think it was their Facebook. And they were like, we need a customer service representative. And I was like, I don't want to do that because I've been doing that for a very long time and I'm over it. But I would like to establish a connection in case something opens up in, propellant manufacturing or any sort of propulsion. So I got an email back and they told me about the position. I was like, great, I'd love to talk about it. And here we are.
That's awesome.
Moved across the country. Stayed at Taylor's house on the way, actually.
I did. Thank you again for letting Lexi and I crash.
No problem.
It's awesome.
But all right, so we kind of put everybody through the gauntlet when we have a guest typically. So the next thing I got to ask you is a little bit of a tough one for people to answer sometimes, but we all have to admit our faults, right?
Of course.
So what have been your biggest failures in rocketry?
Oh, man. Probably, I'm not trying to toot my own horn here, but I've actually never had a rocket come in ballistic. I think my biggest failures were blowing up motors when I was learning how to mix propellant and having a lot of two-stage issues when I was first getting into flying high-power two stages. Whether it was the rocket being marginally stable and the accelerometer was like it's out of tilt or something, and figuring out the stability on a two-stage so that the sustainer accelerometer would recognize an actual good flight and light the sustainer. I'd say those two are my biggest failures, because I had at one point like 5 or 6 motors that were supposed to go in the sustainer of my two-stage rockets that didn't light, and I was like, I got to get these things burnt. They're just kind of, I'm piling up these motors in the corner because I can't get them to light. But yeah, there was a few motors that had some pretty violent katos, or blew a nozzle or floor closure, blew a wall or something. But it's a hard path learning those things, but I learned the most from failures. So figured it out eventually, still figuring it out, but
That's honestly a pretty good track record if your biggest failures are struggling with two stages and blowing up research motors, because that's just kind of what happens. Unless you meet Taylor, then the two stage just works and we don't try again.
I mean, up to the point where the motor lights and we don't know anything after that.
Well, that's the hard part. We got through that, and that's all that matters. Yeah, the smoke trail got a little squiggly, and then we never saw the sustainer again. We don't need to talk about that.
Well, that two-stage you guys flew is still way, way above anything that I've done. So I've done some big rockets, and I've done everything's relative in this hobby, but I've done some two stages, some big rockets, stuff like that, but I've never actually gone higher and faster than I think 29,000 in Mach 2.1 or something. I think I have to look at my records, but it's something like that. I'm not going 44,000 feet on an N1000, on a minimum diameter carbon rocket. So I hope to get there very soon. I have some pretty ambitious plans for balls this year, but they're still going to be in the 30 to 35,000 foot range if the fins stay on.
Well, to give you credit where it's due, there's a chance our two-stage rocket didn't make it to 29,000 feet. So, pretty good one, actually. What did it stage at, Taylor? 18? Yeah, I don't know if we got another 13,000 out of that before it started having problems.
No, I don't think so, but hey, we're going to try it again.
Cooking, though.
But yeah, so that's actually... Oh, go ahead.
What was the... do you know the velocity at staging for the sustainer on that two-stage?
We dropped it below Mach to light it, just so we could get a good coast on it.
I think we were down in the...
It was like 0.8 or 0.85.
No, I mean, it was going slow. I want to say 400 feet per second.
Really?
And then immediately we had the GPS data. It spiked to 1.3 before it locked out or something like that when the sustainer lit. And then we have reason to suspect it never relocked because it became many pieces of electronics.
Yeah, I'm doing some data gathering for two stages now. And instead of just, flying it and seeing if it works, I want to get some actual quantifiable data. So I'm actually flying my two stage this Saturday in Vegas on the same motors that I flew it on at LDRS, but the flight parameters are going to be different. So I'm going to let it coast for way longer. I'm going to wait for the separation charge for way longer. And I've had talks with a couple of my friends with, if you're flying a rocket on the same motors and you're trying to get repeatable data for a two stage at least, is it going to go higher if you let it slow down, if you let the sustainer slow down and light it at a higher altitude, or are you going to get more altitude if you go bang bang and separate the two stages immediately and then light the sustainer right after motor burnout of the booster? I have my own personal thoughts about which one is going to get more altitude, but I think it's going to be similar, but I don't think it's going to be a huge difference, because I got just under 12,500 at LDRS on my 3-inch to 3-inch two stage on a K1275 to a J275. And that was with a separation charge almost immediately after the booster motor burned out and sustainer ignition a second later. And this time the separation charge will be 1.5 seconds after booster motor burnout, and the sustainer is going to ignite 3 seconds after that. So if I get 13,000, I'll be happy. But like I said, I don't think I'm going to get that much altitude if I do.
Here's a thought.
Until you get into like,
okay.
go ahead, Matt.
I was gonna say you should drag race two stages, same motor, and find out experientially.
Yeah, absolutely.
And people used to do stuff.
Thank you.
People used to do stuff like that, Matt.
That's awesome.
We're not really allowed to do it anymore at a lot of launch sites. If you can guess why.
Yeah,
Dude,
Yeah.
honestly,
until you get to like extreme performance rockets, like 100K or not 100K, but like I'm only going 12,500 feet, right? If you're going like 30,000, 40,000, 50,000 feet, I think that's really when that's going to matter, when you light the second stage versus, lighting it right after the booster motor burns out. But I don't know. That's what I'm doing this for. So this is all theory to me at the moment.
Yeah, the like base level, just like instant assumption would lead you to think that a bigger staging gap would make for more altitude as long as you don't get it too slow, which does make sense on really high altitude stuff.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the path, like Jim Jarvis sort of established that. The first time in my memory I really saw like a high performance 2-stage just like spend a ton of time between the stages.
Yeah.
And I mean, Jim Jarvis, if anyone is a great litmus test for pretty much anything in high performance rocketry, Jim's a good person to look at because he's sort of been up and down the roads in either direction.
I've read a couple of his papers and I'm just blown away. That dude is a brilliant guy. But yeah, like you said,
cool.
It makes more sense to have a huge staging gap when you're going that high because you're in much thinner air, right? There's a whole lot less friction in your rocket, or drag rather. So at 12,000 feet, it's not that much thinner than unless I'm flying in Colorado. Where was NSL? What was the name of the city?
Alamosa.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm launching from 7,600 feet. Then it's a little bit different, but I'm flying from not that high above sea level. So,
dude, cool launch site. NSL videos coming soon, by the way. And if people want to see your 2-stage, Joe, it's in the first cut of LDRS 43 from Rocket Vlogs on YouTube. Yeah, I got pretty good. I was pretty centered when that staged. I was pretty happy with that shot. So that was a cool one.
I think there's a sweet spot in staging gap to where, like, obviously with the higher performance rocket, that gap gets a lot bigger, but you will get gains on a lower altitude rocket like what you flew. But it would be like maybe a 3 or 4 second gap instead of 10 or 12 seconds.
Yeah, because I feel
you're
like sustainers,
gaining. You're not getting the advantage of the thinner air so much, but it is coasting to a higher altitude before it lights. So as long as the rocket doesn't slow it down too much and you lose that like inertia, but that's just my opinion.
The thing I was most excited about at LDRS with my 2-stage is the max off angle. I flew that same rocket, that same 2-stage a month before in Vegas, and the max off angle was like 13 degrees, 14 degrees, something like that, which is fine. But I lost some altitude because of it. And at LDRS, it was 5.9 degrees. So it was pretty straight. And I think it had to do with a couple things. One, I flew on a much longer rail. And the sustainer is actually kind of heavy. Having the K1275, sorry, I should preface that there was a K85 in the booster in Vegas, so it's much shorter, bringing the center of gravity further forward. And with the K1275, with the extra propellant mass and the longer length case, I think that helped the stability a little bit too. And there was lower winds in California versus when I flew in Vegas, at least on the day that I flew it in California.
Dude, speaking of Vegas, I didn't realize that June was a month that they still flew. So I pulled up the weather because I was like, ooh, that is maybe
the wind
gonna suck. But
the wind is looking pretty brutal. But early in the day, I think if I can get off by like 8 or 8:30, I think I'll be all right.
Yeah, it looks like there's a nice break in the heat at least because it says it's 105 today, but it's supposed to be 91 high on Saturday. if you hadn't said anything about the wind, I might have considered coming out there because I have stuff
Sorry,
that
dude.
I can't fly. I have so many AMW motors I need to fly. And I just want to, I've got the 3-grain Blue Baboon 75L, and I just want to burn that thing
Dude.
so bad.
That'd be cool.
Okay, so I've got a couple other things here for you to throw at you. They're more fun than talking about things you've done wrong. And I think we're going to align well given our preferences in the world of rocketry. But given an unlimited budget, but sort of operating within the realm of reality, what is your like absolute dream rocket project?
Oh man. That's a tough one. I haven't even thought about that. I would say it would probably be a 2-stage of some sort, because that's what I'm gravitating towards the past couple of years, especially. Like probably like an N3300. This would be like either a 4-inch or a 5.5-inch 2-stage. An N3300, just because I would want if I'm flying the 9815 360 case as a in a rocket as a 2-stage, I want something with the highest average thrust to make it, to have the highest thrust to weight off the rail to get it going straight. So N3300 to like an M750 or like an N1000 or something. That would be pretty cool.
The end-to-end 2-stage is like way up there on the dream list for a lot of people. I'm one of them. Well, really, I want to do O to N, but that's
O5500 to a N1000 would be insane.
Yeah. No, I pitched to Gary to long burn for the 2480 case as sort of an alternative to the CTI N1560. I mean, this was before I bought one, so I was at balls just begging him. I was like, please, I'm going to spend this dumb amount of money. And then Chris Short happened to have an N1560, but I like to think if I repeatedly put that bug in his ear, then maybe we can have a ridiculous long burn for that case someday. But yeah, dude, just a big, nasty initial spike and then a long burn 4-inch motor up top would be so nuts. But honestly, maybe we should revisit the our dream rocket projects episode, because I don't even remember what I said or what any of us said.
I don't either.
I mean,
or I'd like to do something ridiculous like a 24-inch Fat Boy or something on like 5 M6000s or something, just crazy acceleration.
Dude,
the nose cone would have to weigh like 200 pounds to get the CPCG right. Could you imagine what the flame on multiple M6000s at the same time would look like?
No, they'd be gnarly.
But now I want to do it.
Yeah.
Not 6 because I can't afford that, but maybe 2 or 3.
Nah, we can get 6 together, dude. We'll figure it out. We'll save a little money. We'll do 3 M4500s and 3 M6000s.
Ah, perfect.
How's that?
When we get to 1,000 subscribers, that's the project.
Matt said it, so he's funding it.
No, I didn't.
You heard
say
him, folks. 1,000 subscribers.
Like and subscribe.
Dude, that would cost so much money that there's no shot that we would anywhere near break even, let alone be able to fund it in the first place. That does remind me, though, Taylor, it's a little bit of a teaser I'm going to ask on the podcast. Did you talk to that guy about that nose cone, and are we doing that?
I did talk to him, and then I kind of just left him hanging because I'm like, how am I going to go? I'm like, he said I could come get it like later in the summer, but I'm like trying to figure out when I would go, and I can't. I would need to make like a specific trip for that, but I'm like, but then I'd have to either rent a car or take the van. There's some logistic stuff that I wasn't ready for, and I'm like,
right,
I don't know.
Stay
but if
tuned,
you're really
then,
down
folks.
for it,
dude, I am down for it.
Okay.
I don't like.
I didn't know how much enthusiasm was there.
I mean, maybe it doesn't happen next year, but Joe will tell you what this is all about after the show, because yeah. So there's a little bit of teaser for you guys. Speaking of big dumb projects, but yeah. So maybe we'll revisit our dream projects episode, because there's a lot that we could talk about there. But next on the docket, Joe, unless Shane or Matt have any comments.
Go for it.
This is going to be a good one because you've been around forever. And we like to talk about stuff like this. So, out of production stuff, kits, motors, parachutes, anything you want. What is on like your dream acquisition list?
Man, what was the single use M750? It was like an M65, I think. I'd like to have one of those.
Like 90 single use.
90 single
Yeah.
use. That would be cool. I don't know if I would fly it. I would just want it as like a collector's item, but it also kind of scares me just to have a motor that big kind of sitting in my house, especially with the lack of humidity in Utah. Out of production kit would probably be, I would like a Starburst again. I don't think that's in production, right?
Not as far as I know.
Yeah, that would be cool. Although I love flying huge rockets, I still like flying little rockets too. It just so happens that I haven't flown a small rocket in a long time. Small, all things considered. Man, I should have thought about this before coming on here. I feel like I'm on the spot and I'm just drawing a blank.
I'll buy you some time real quick. The Starburst is in production. It's on the website right now for $79.
Although it'd be cool if you made a bigger one.
There you go. There's the 2M6000.
Oh my god.
Dude, two motor mount rockets are awesome and not stupid. Originally, we planned on doing 298s in the Arcus. We even bought two N2000s for it. And then every time we were like, this is what we're doing, people were like, why? And eventually we're like, yeah, you're right. Why?
It was right up to the point that I was making the parts, and somehow we had never actually, I guess, thought about how that was going to lay out with the fins and everything. And we're like, well, two of these fins are going to be like surface mounted, so that's not really going to be that cool.
Unless we like offset the motor mounts and then built like crazy centering rings. Yeah.
Kind of going back to dream rocket builds, but also tying into this, I don't think the King Viper 4, was there a King Viper 4 or was this King Viper 3?
I think it was just King Viper 3.
Okay.
But King Viper 4 sounds awesome.
Yeah, imagine one of those on 4 M6000s.
My God.
So it's M4.
Yeah. How would you hold the fins on there? Just glued like in between the tubes. Let's see here. What's another out of production thing that I would like to do? I don't know. I'll have to get back to you. I'm drawing a blank at the moment.
All right. Well, I can put a little bit of a bug in your ear on some stuff that I know we've talked about in the past, but I would like to acknowledge real quick. Shane has a King Viper 3.
I do.
Nice.
He needs to build it.
Didn't you win that, Shane?
Yeah, at Midwest Power.
Sick.
Okay. Well, let me throw some old brands
I didn't want it at all.
Let's talk Dynacom stuff. Aerex stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I would love a tarantula.
Stuff.
Yeah, I would love a tarantula. I would love. I think they did a scorpion, right?
Yeah,
dude, I have one. I just got one.
I'm very jealous,
dude. Mike, so I got it from Vern Knowles, and my goal is to fly it as much as Vern flew his original one, and he flew that thing like 40 times.
Oh, I got one. Something that is definitely up there, like top 5, probably top 3. Dream rocket / out of production kind of project. I would love a OG O10,000, Cosden O10,000.
Dude,
I would love to fly one of those.
You're not going to believe this, but I know where one is.
That's not a clone. It's a real Cosden O10.
I was recently enlightened to someone that actually has one. I was like, boy, how are we going to work out this
How
deal?
do I get this? How do I get this in my hands
as
soon as
dude,
possible?
I'm like, man, that would be so crazy. But yeah, there's at least one still out there. Man, that's talk about like finding a needle in a haystack. I don't know that he even sold
Absolutely.
more than like 10 of those throughout the entire Cosden production run because they were prohibitively expensive. But
Yeah.
Okay, if you get it, what are you gonna do with it?
me or
I'm
Joe?
gonna slap a fin.
If you get it,
Oh, I don't know. I'll fly it in something. But I'm with Joe on it. Do it Cosden style.
Yeah.
Put a fin can
Slap
on
a
it
fin
and
can
go.
on it. I will say one of the cooler, not super high performance, well, really not high performance at all. Once again, it's all relative, but the Jurassic Kick project with the O10,000 was sick.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm just a little bit biased because, they were DW drum shells. I'm a drummer. So, but
makes sense.
that thing was super sick.
Dude, so nuts. I love watching the video of it. I don't know if it was Kai's video or who made that video, but it was it's really funny. They're just out on the lake bed. They got like a bunch of women around and like a chef cooking up salmon and stuff. And I was like, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen. Very much a rock and roll rocket launch.
Yeah.
But yeah, dude, that's so crazy. And that motor, like objectively, is not that phenomenal by today's standards in terms of like ISP and total impulse for the case and length. Like you could definitely make something way spicier in the same hardware, but it's just so iconic. It's got the giant bumpers between the grains.
Yeah, I don't think Cosden's motors, I could be wrong, but I don't think he used a lot of metals. So
Right.
I don't think his motors were really that high performing as far as the ISP goes. But they looked cool and sounded awesome. Like of course, the what was the M3700 I think he made, or M3500, or that was cool.
The L3000 as well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, dude, it was a bunch of just like really ambitious stuff, like you said, without propellant that's like exceptionally impressive. But that is also what makes them great to fly if you happen to have them, because they age fine because they're such low metals propellant that like I'm not too worried about. I have an M1130 that's from God knows when, but I'm not really worried about it being hard to light like all the AMW Green Gorilla stuff I got rid of.
Yeah, and of course we can't go without talking about the M2240.
Oh man, iconic.
It's probably that was my favorite Cosden motor.
Yeah, dude, they made such a crazy sound. If you want to hear one, my dad flew one. I believe the video is just called "Flying All of Our Big Motors in One Weekend" or something like that. My dad had that since his first like level 3 pathway in 2011 or 12 or something like that. And he ended up flying it, I think, finally in 2023. And one of my favorite things about like Cosden AMW motors, which is like objectively bad for the hardware and kind of just a waste of space, but the full diameter smoke grain is like 3 inches long and just a solid puck of like smoke mix. So they burn for like a minute and a half. I was really excited for it. And my dad's M2240s went out after the motor burned out. I was so bummed.
A bummer.
And I thought about lighting it in the neighborhood. And I was like, well, that's a bad idea. We're just going to smoke this place out for 10 minutes when it's not in a case.
Yeah. Those full diameter smoke grains are great for tracking, but man, they will toast your rocket, or the aft end of your rocket, man. That will just tear it up.
Yeah. We know, unfortunately. Our 2800 skid mark, if you watch the onboard footage, you can see the back of the arc is actually on fire, and it burned all the cheap, terrible cardboard 54 millimeter motor tubes. We didn't learn our lesson on the first time around, evidently.
Is it repairable, or is it completely just like
Taylor
you can't even
so.
fit a motor case in there?
I think it is.
Okay.
Braden's convinced that it's not, but he also hasn't seen it.
I don't think it's going to be easy. You're like, oh no, yeah, we'll just do this. And I'm like, it's okay, go ahead. It sounds like it's going to suck.
What if we just
Braden was also
out... Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say Braden was also not convinced on the length of the shot cord on the Arcus either, which is it's funny to me. The difference is, like, I think we're all, pretty, what's the word I'm looking for, educated on, big rockets at this point. But seeing your opinion on something, Braden, versus Taylor's, and then you guys just kind of going at it, it's really funny.
Yeah,
I guess
Like, dude, that shock cord's
with the
not long
shock
enough
cord,
at all.
yeah, I hadn't really considered that there was like going to be no stress on it because of the deployment bag. But even still, like looking at it, I'm like, it's just so short that it seems crazy. Like if somehow it got tangled and put all the tension on that, imagine say it somehow gets wrapped around the deployment bag, Taylor. And imagine this crazy scenario where somehow your deployment bag gets ripped off of the nylon leader from violent forces occurring and you lose your deployment bag. Just imagine something like that happens.
Can you imagine that,
Anything's
Taylor?
possible.
I think Taylor's imagining it.
I don't know. I don't think I could imagine that. That's
That would be-
unimaginable.
Yeah, way too crazy.
You look like you were imagining it, but okay.
For those who missed the NSL episode, that happened to his sumo.
Oh no!
You know what I still haven't gotten the data off the Raven, but because it's Raven 4 and I can't just look at it on my phone. But what I thought of is I'm like, I think I may have mixed up the settings and I may have had accelerometer deployment on the Raven, but also on the backup altimeter it was set for like +2. So because it weathercocked hard, it deployed extra late, so it was going extra fast.
Yeah, that's very possible.
I'm like, okay, I need to change that, but
it explained the zipper too. It's a pretty good one. All right, Joe.
Do you remember the Giant Leap Fireball?
I don't think so.
It was a product.
Yes. I remember it.
The Nerf ball covered in Kevlar.
Yeah.
I've decided that's going to be my gimmick part, like fix for when I rebuild the sumo. Because I accidentally got one in a big lot of stuff, and I really want to use it, and so I think it would be really funny.
Dude, it would be funny. I don't know if they still even make that thing, do they? Giant Leap is like kind of an enigma. I don't know. Yeah, that's what I mean, though. It's like, if you buy stuff from them, do you get it?
I know. I'm scared to, but
I got my slimline retainers for my 2-stage that I just flew, or just built rather, for the 3-inch to 3-inch I got from them.
Interesting.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess I shouldn't just say, well, this company just take your money. I'm just saying, like, the Hawk Mountain website was up for a long, long time.
Yeah.
And you definitely wouldn't have got anything you ordered from them. So I'm sure Giant Leap is fine, and maybe contact them.
I did. I emailed them first, and I was like, hey, I need 2 of these 54 millimeter slimline retainers. Are they in stock before I order them? They're like, we have them in stock. And, they shipped out the next day. So,
well, there you go. GiantLeapRocketry.com, I think, is the...
It does seem like on their current website that maybe it kind of shows stock. Because I know, like, on certain sizes of parachutes and stuff, some sizes will say, like, out of or not available or out of stock or something. So
yeah, do they still make TAC 1s?
They sure do.
Oh, that's sick, actually. And Doug flew a vertical assault at LDRS, or was it LDRS or NSL? I can't remember. I think it was LDRS. So I looked into it. They still make it. Yeah. And it's all fiberglass now. They don't even have the phenolic option.
Whoa.
But you can order a fiberglass vertical assault 3.0 on Giant Leap's website right now. And it has the Acme fin can, but it's used correctly with a bigger airframe so that there's not a giant, lip from the fin can to the... I still think we should do Acme fin can minimum diameter rockets because I have a few of them at my parents' house. But it's like a very classic looking fiberglass kit. It's fiberglass kit, phenolic motor mount, wooden centering rings, or not centering rings, just bulkhead. Oh, no, it does have wood centering rings. And it comes with Kevlar shock cord and everything. It's kind of cool.
Man.
Sounds rad.
We're all going to buy Giant Leap kits now. Dude,
yeah.
All I'm saying is I think I need a Talon. And my head says I need the 6-inch one, but really I need like the 3. Oh, they don't have the 3 anymore. All right, 4. Yeah, that's what I need. Another 4-inch rocket with a 54 millimeter motor mount. That's exactly what I'm missing.
Did you guys see the video from the early 2000s or like maybe around 2010 someone built a giant Talon that flew on a pea, and the way they had
Yeah,
their
dude.
fins mounted to the rocket was by like hinges or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
dude.
That was cool.
David Reese made the motor.
Sweet.
The one that
Rad.
worked at LDRS 29. Yeah, I actually reference that flight a lot, but I don't give the specifics of it. But it has like the best meme name of any rocket because they called it "It burns when I pee." All right, Joe. We do have a little bit of a hard landing for you here, but I wanted to ask because
Okay.
I'm curious, as someone who works in this profession, what are your biggest pet peeves in rocketry? We've done an episode on this where just like small things that aren't like necessarily wrong, but like maybe you shouldn't be doing that, or I don't know how you came to that conclusion, but here's why you shouldn't do that. What's something that you see commonly in rockets that you're like, don't?
The first thing that comes to my mind, because there's a lot of them, but the first thing that comes to my mind is people not ground testing. That drives me up the wall, and just believing that online black powder calculator thing.
Yeah, that
Because
would
I don't
be
think
crazy.
it really,
Who would do that?
because it doesn't take into account several things. I think another huge pet peeve of mine, and call me crazy here, but a lot of people just going from cool, I got my level 3 certification, I'm going to space immediately. My next rocket is going to be something that, instead of scaling up and learning all the physics involved and things like that, instead of putting gradually going up, there's nothing wrong with being ambitious and trying to set those goals for yourselves, but not just generally not doing the right research and just, I guess it's one way to find out type attitude. It's to each their own, but I think your chances of success go up a whole lot more if you kind of work your way up to these insane flights rather than just being like, cool, I'm going to space right after I flew my level 3 rocket to a mile or something.
Right. Yeah, and that it's such an easy thing to be like, okay, I've got it figured out. I flew the big motor. So I'm planning on doing a video or like a series of videos with footage I already have, but one of them I want to talk about is high performance rocket stuff. And we want to do a podcast episode on it too, but people have been asking since like episode 5 of the podcast for us to talk about high performance rockets and fast 2 stages and stuff. And for the longest time, we've been like, we don't like have enough of that in our repertoire to feel like we can talk about it confidently for an hour. Like Taylor has lost 3 of your 6 minimum diameter rockets or flights, or 2 of 5,
2 of 6.
Okay, so it's getting better. Okay,
Yeah,
but I mean, I had one work that was 38. I put a 54 in the ground. I put a 4-inch rocket to 20,000 feet in the ground, and then both my other minimum diameter flights put the mains out at the top. So I'm like, I don't know if I'm qualified to talk about like in completion about
this is how you do
rocketry. Yeah, exactly. But I can tell you all about how to keep fins on a rocket. So far, I've had a good run at that.
Yeah, I will say there's in this day and age, the amount of available resources to make these projects work is way more common than it used to be. Like even like 10 or 11 years ago, people really had to do pretty much figure out everything on their own. But with the availability of forums and YouTube tutorials and things like that, it does make it a whole lot easier now, which is great.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
That's awesome in my book.
Yeah, we can definitely do a 2-stage episode now, though, Taylor. We've got that locked in for sure.
Yeah, I mean, we got it figured out, obviously.
Yeah, so easy. Okay, well, does anybody have anything else to say? I want to do a new segment where we highlight one fun comment from previous episodes from the YouTube channel, and then we've got a fan mail that we want to talk about here. But
I was kind of hoping, Joe, you would talk about a little bit of your time through EX stuff.
But yeah, so I won't take up too much of your time, but I was very fortunate to have learned from Alan Whitmore, who passed away last year, unfortunately. He taught me pretty much everything when it comes to manufacturing your own propellant. I would go over to his house. I only lived maybe 30 minutes from him when I was in North Carolina. I was in Raleigh and he was in Chapel Hill. And he basically started me off with a really forgiving propellant that he called Black Velvet, just because it's very easy to mix and there's the tolerances on the chemicals were pretty high. So if you did mess up, it would probably still work, but just be a little underperforming. I did get to see a lot of really cool stuff in my early years from some pretty, I call them heroes, but people like Mark Lloyd. Before MDRA became a huge thing, Neil McGilvray and Bob Utley and Kathy Gillian and all those people would come down and fly with us in North Carolina. And they were flying some really, really cool stuff. Mark made the motor for Sterling Edmonds' Phoenix project that they flew in Texas for LDRS 20, what was that? I think it was 2010, something like that. But that was a Q13000. And it was I think a 6 grain, it was a 5 or 6 grain Bates grain, by the way. They didn't do any like Finisol geometries or anything like that. And it worked just fine. They also flew a rocket, a giant upscale of the Big Dog, the little Estes Big Dog, with the kind of swept back fins. They called it the Bigger Dog. And it was originally a Q, but for some reason, they didn't want to deal with the paperwork. So they shaved off like an inch of the forwardmost grain to make it a full P. And that was amazing. I don't think I should have even been allowed at the time to be at that launch. But it blew up and was spectacular. Who
Taylor
else
was there for the Phoenix flight.
Yeah. So that was a group of AAA East North Carolina guys, some OGs in the club. I actually went out to hang out with Mark Lloyd probably a year or two before I moved from North Carolina, and I hadn't even seen him or talked to him in 15 years prior to that. And I was like, hey man, if you wanted to, could you make another Q like that with no problems? And he was like, absolutely, I could definitely do it. And I was like, good to know.
Yeah, I'll keep that in my back pocket.
Yeah, but a lot of the guys from MDRA would come down and fly with us. Jerry O'Sullivan was another one. Fred Wallace, Kevin Mitchell, all those guys. I'm glad Higgs Farm really went off because Rockets Magazine did so much for hobby and the community as far as high power rocketry goes. But yeah, I was around experimental motors, from the time Alan kind of got involved into high power rocketry, which was probably 98 or 99. And Jim Scarpine actually brought him into the hobby. So
yeah,
once I got old enough, no, I'm just kidding. When I was actually 18, I would go over to Alan's basement and we would sit there and just mix propellant. It was awesome.
That's awesome. Yeah, Shane and I are really feeling the itch and gonna do something about it relatively soon. We gotta get this move out of the way first, but
yeah,
then we're gonna dive into that.
Well, it's an upfront investment, but it's worth it. You'll save some money.
Well, we have a little bit of a cheat code I'll tell you about, but
all right.
Matt, any final questions? Or Taylor?
I can't think of anything at the moment, but it's been awesome.
Well,
awesome listening to you.
Well, let's read the highlighted comment of the episode. It comes from Sleepy Sack, and I think, Matt, you're going to like this one. He says, suggested future rocket, ultimate Best Western special, based on the original Best Western special, but at 4-time king-size pillow length. There would be 12-inch diameter.
Wow.
No, wait, 16. It's a 4-inch rocket.
Yeah.
I was not expecting when the LCO was announcing the length of your rocket to hear it's the length of 2 king-size pillows.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Dude, that's the guy that at Balls last year, it was their birthday and they flew a big motor and it KO'd. And after it was just like pieces and everyone's silent, he just leans into the mic and he's like, "Happy birthday." And I was like, this guy rules, dude. All right.
Or the R motor that was like probably 10 or 15 seconds already coming back in, and he was like, "We might have had a problem."
Yeah, that's one of the few times you hear me talk on camera. I think I cut it out, but I was like, might have had a problem. There's a 10-inch motor doing circles up there, but okay.
Sorry,
all right, finally we're going to finish on this. Yeah, it was hilarious, but we're going to finish on this fan mail. It comes from Liam. He says he officially found the text feature. By the way, if you aren't aware and you're not listening to this on YouTube, you can go to the description in Apple Podcasts or Spotify or whatever you're listening to and click send us a text. It will send us directly to our Buzzsprout website, and I can read it out on the podcast. And if you are watching on YouTube, leave a comment, and maybe you'll be the featured comment of the week. He says, "Hey, Braden, it's Liam, and I officially found the text feature. I'm back to pitch a bit of a ridiculous idea for the 2x Arceus. I named it the Load Shredder. This load, the shredder load. Please, unless you want to kill the Arceus, don't fly this load." I think Liam still is missing the fact that we can't afford any of this in the first place. But
it's fun to think about.
I know we have big rockets. We don't have big rocket consistent flying money. So I would just like to point that out.
That's just
in the
what
center,
we
have
want to do.
Yeah. For example, in the center we have a CTI N5800. We already can't afford it.
That by itself may shred the Arceus.
Yeah, honestly.
Yeah.
And then the outboards, we have 4 Loki 78s. And in the 38s, we have 4 Loki K627s. So, a total impulse of 47,887 Newton seconds. More impulses than we've ever put in the Punisher, worth noting. That'll probably be the most violent and expensive shred in rocketry. Also, would probably get all of your AAA NAR memberships revoked, considering you'd be definitely 100% now the bad boy. Know that the bad boy is going to shred. Thanks for the amazing podcast. Try to keep the big rockets in one piece, Liam. Yeah, that's 1,000% off the table. Dude, and an N spicier than the one we put in the Arceus, being the N2000, or really the N2800, which is barely an N. We're already pushing that rocket. So
yeah,
there's not a lot left to be had there. I do think we could use the burnt up 54s for some air starts, though. We've talked about that. And that would be a good way to get it a little higher without killing it. Telling you we do N2000 or no, N3300, and then we'll air start K700s and 4 J570s. Nah, that might shred it. We'll do sequential air starts.
The K's 2 at a time with
the K's first and then the 4 J's. Yeah.
Now you got to do like Tim with the big Dark Star and get it like 10 feet off the rail, and then like the N28.
Dude,
2800 or 2801 or whatever.
Terrifying.
Yeah.
It was his was the 6-inch one, the CTI 4-grain skid mark. 030.
Dude, the Scream, the K's made.
Dude,
man,
we talked about that a lot on this
That's exactly
podcast.
what it sounds like.
Dude, I reposted my K2045 flight as a short, and someone was like, "What was that?" I was like, if it was a K2050, he would have been like, "Oh, that's a K2050," but it's not, so he didn't. Sorry,
it wasn't
there's
blue.
an Aerotech employee in the room. I shouldn't be hyping up VMAX, but it's long gone, so it doesn't matter. And now that we're at the end of the podcast, it's a great time to mention Joe. We had plenty of questions about Aerotech and ISB's acquisition from Carmen, and you can go ahead and not say anything, and I will just tell people on your behalf that Joe's not allowed to say anything about it. So, sorry everybody, there was a lot of questions, and hopefully we have an opportunity to get those answered in the future, but at this time, we were politely told that this information's not available to us as of yet. So,
sorry,
I will say, if you're concerned about the future of Propellant and stuff like that, and you're on Facebook, go find various Facebook posts about it, and you can read what Gary, the founder of Aerotech, has been saying about it. And that's all I'll say, because I don't want to dig a hole that Joe can't get out of. So
Yes.
I'll wait till he's not
I
here.
definitely don't want to be in that hole.
But Joe, I'm going to start letting the guest plug stuff first. Social medias, whatever you want. Go ahead and tell the people where to find you if you care to.
Well, you can find me on Facebook. I'm not super active on there. Pretty much anytime I post, it's, in a rocketry related group about a project I'm working on or something that I plan on flying. You can find me on Instagram at Joe Hillville. I'm a little bit more active on there. I don't post a lot of things, but I post on my story pretty often. So that's about really all I have as far as social media goes.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here, Joe. It's been an awesome time. And thank you to everybody who's listening or watching. My name is Braden. You can find me on YouTube at Rocket Vlogs. You can find me on Instagram at BigB1011. And once again, I'm back on the TikTok stuff. Dude, I've got 21,000 followers now.
Sick.
I posted
That's
like
awesome.
60 videos on TikTok. And don't read the comments. It's scary. It's making me kind of consider deleting the account, if I'm honest. But if you want to go check that out, that's fine. But I would prefer that you go follow me on Instagram at BigB1011, where the comments aren't questionable beyond belief.
I'm Taylor, and you can find me on YouTube at The Rocket Channel.
My name is Shane. You can find me online at hprtools.com, on YouTube at
Speaking of
Postart
which-
Propulsions. Oh, yeah.
Nice.
Sick.
Yeah.
I remember shipping that.
Where did you find that,
Yeah,
Joe?
I got it from this amazing website called hprtools.com.
I wonder if they have any coupons.
There
Hey,
is.
coupons.
And do you remember what it is, Braden? I'm blanking on it. Is it HG
No, but
Pod?
something like that. We'll put it in the description on YouTube. And if you're listening on anything else, you already heard the mid-roll ad, so you know
It's
what it is.
10% off.
And
This is
that
what I'm
expires.
using for my Mach 3 at Balls.
Oh, nice.
Oh.
That expires on the 4th of July, right?
I didn't set an expiration date. I can, though.
Yeah, it expires on the 4th of July. I was trying to set you up for an easy win there.
Oh.
That's when your mid-roll ads end. All right, there's one more of us here. All right.
I forgot who I was. And I don't know where you can find me, but here we are. Thanks for joining.
All right, once again, thank you for being here, Joe. It was awesome. We are the
thanks,
Anti-Gravity
guys.
Group. This is the Anti-Gravity Group podcast, and we will see you all next time.
We might just hear from Nigel the Rocket Cat. Load up the professional masterpiece, you can bet on that. A launch and a chat with them is guaranteed to be a blast. It's the Anti-Gravity Group podcast.